Welcome to another episode of Beyond Physical, where we talk about the mental, emotional, social, and at times spiritual benefits of exercise. We believe that exercise is more than movement, and this podcast is our attempt at sharing that message with the world by sharing our own as well as our guests' experiences and knowledge. If you enjoy it, we ask that you please spread the message by leaving a rating and review, or even better, by sharing with a friend. That sounds like refreshment.
All comes together with an umuti.
It all comes together with an umuti. Cheers, bro. Welcome back. Cheers.
I can't reach it.
That's unacceptable.
I get it. I get it
It's
now.
okay. Everyone, welcome. Welcome to Beyond Physical. I hope you are sitting at home enjoying a cold, fresh Namuti like we are here in the outside studio with Mark on the camera back from KZN, baby. Mark's in the building. Beautiful Monday morning, actually afternoon. And we're here to talk about burnout. It's a Monday. Why are we talking about burnout? We've got a whole week ahead of us. It's a very common thing. It is becoming more and more prevalent as the world is interconnected constantly with globalization, with technology. We're constantly talking to one another. We're constantly communicating. We're always switched on with our mobile devices. It's very difficult to get away from stimulation now because we're so interconnected. It's come with amazing leaps in productivity, but at the same time, it's come with this huge load of work and, as I said, being plugged into things all the time. So naturally, people have struggled to manage that, and it's come at a cost. Mental health, physical health, emotional health. Burnout can be a very costly thing to people and to organizations. But we're mainly here to talk about the individual, how it affects human beings. Just to define, for those of you who aren't sure what burnout means, if you've never heard of it before, burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands. I think another little caveat I would add onto that is that burnout often manifests in not being excited by things that would usually excite you. That's kind of a key telltale, I'd say, is that things that usually fill up your cup are kind of not really turning the needle much or moving the needle much. But Matt and Gideon, it is so cool to have you guys here to chat about this. I think it's very common in the fitness industry in particular, but there are obviously a lot of things that we can touch on. And I know you two have prepared quite well for this episode. You've done a bit of research and really interested to hear what your findings are. I think I'm going to start off with Matt. What can you tell us about burnout from any of your own experience, and then maybe touch on some of your key findings in preparation for today's episode?
Okay, so I think from my personal experience, burnout has been something that I've had to not push away, but almost embrace to understand. So just like any form of adversity in life, when it happens, it's natural for us to not want to kind of associate ourselves with it and kind of understand why this is causing the emotions and the feelings and the kind of effects on life that it is. But as soon as you kind of take time and really settle into it, you can understand what is the cause of it, and work your way back into finding what led you to this point and how you can avoid it from happening in the future. And when I did that, it quickly brought a lot of aspects to my attention, like not getting enough rest, overtraining, overexerting, and overcommitting myself to things that weren't necessarily what I needed to commit a lot of my time to. And in overcommitting my time, I lost touch with a lot of things that are supposed to refuel me and re-energize me. And as soon as I kind of changed things around, I could see a more sustainable way of navigating through the industry and progressing through day-to-day tasks and objectives that I at one point didn't feel was possible. It's a very personal thing. Like, everyone's burnout is personal, and it's something that people can't necessarily tell you how to deal with it. Like, a lot of people will just say, oh, just rest or just do this, but then maybe for some people it's that they feel restless, so it's hard for them to rest, or they feel like they're actually burnt out to the point that they only feel like resting. So it's about finding what works for you in that aspect, and then kind of taking guidance from people. And it's so interesting. Over the weekend, I was talking to family and friends, and someone just said, when you listen to advice from people, take what works for you. Don't take everything, because not everything will work for you.
I was going to
Um,
say on that, sorry to interrupt, but rest is also, it's actually a subjective thing. What rest looks like for Mark, for Gideon, for me, it's going to be, it might be very different to what rest looks like for you. I mean, prime example, I went away the other weekend and ran a marathon with Claire. And for me, I'm sorry, that's rest. Like, that was beautiful. That was chilling. I was taking in the
Yeah.
scenery, and I felt rejuvenated and rested after that time away running through the forest. It was beautiful. I also remember telling you when I came back from the mile, I was like, I feel like I was on a retreat. I was like, this was like, granted, I did go away for like 4 days afterwards, but it's very different for different people where some people love watching series, like others like going and hanging out with their friends a lot, but then you'll get kind of introverted people who, for them, if they go and spend a lot of time with their mates,
They need time
they
alone.
need time alone.
Yeah.
Where it's like they're drained from that. So it's also being aware of what rest is for you. Gideon, I think, can you speak to a little bit what your rest protocol looks like? Because you, I've observed, are quite good with putting boundaries in place. I'd probably say you're the best at that in our little Horizon ecosystem.
Yeah.
So what does rest look like for you, and how did you figure that out?
I think the biggest thing for me was I remember in the beginning at Horizon, after coming out of studies and going straight into working and not having any lull period, so like straight from doing like a degree right into working full on, like building up my brand, building up the business, starting at a new gym like Horizon, and then not taking any time off. I remember hitting this point where I was like, I'm not enjoying this anymore. Like what you said, when something that you're passionate about becomes something that you resent, and that started to happen for me. And I was like, whoa, 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 I need to put the brakes on. This is not working for me. And taking the time and reflecting on what that feeling was like actually made me feel, okay, this is like, now I know what this feeling's like, and I'm not even gonna wait until that feeling. I can now feel it weeks before it actually happens, and then I take the time to focus on things, maybe still work the way I do, but just take the gas off a little bit. So not taking a 100% break, but definitely taking on less than what I normally would. Because how I normally would operate is I'll just continue to take on more clients and more responsibilities, more online clients. But instead, now what I do is I'll I'll continue to do what I currently do, and then just prioritize more downtime. And like downtime for me is just purely just chilling with, you know, my girlfriend or with my friends or things like that. Just outside of my like daily schedule.
And have you experienced burnout before?
Yeah.
And if so, what did that look like and feel like?
Burnout was for me the very first time I experienced it full on was in a physical way from when I was swimming. I remember the day that I quit swimming. That's like the day I felt true burnout. It was like a random Tuesday in the middle of winter, and like my dad had fetched me from swimming, and I got into the car and I said, never fucking going back to this place. And I literally, after that day, that's like when I stopped swimming. And after doing it for 6 years, like that, I felt truly and utterly destroyed from it. And maybe you could argue if I managed my time better, and if I wasn't all in it, or if I practiced differently, maybe I wouldn't have reached that like boiling point. But that kind of was the ultimate feeling of burnout. Like I've never felt that level before. And that's kind of like almost like the top reference point I have. So now, like for like when I'm working, I now know what the ceiling is, and I never want to go there, so I try and stay below, so I can. It just kind of ticks over, so I can still manage my productivity, but never hit that like absolute ceiling.
Did you find that there were kind of early indicators that you were on your way to being burnt out, or
Plateauing.
was it really acute and sudden and you had no idea it was coming?
It was definitely kind of like a long time coming. I'd say like 6 months. Like galas became chores, not like fun anymore. It was like my Saturday would roll around. I would be so happy if there wasn't like a gala, scheduled for that week, and I could just like there was no training on the Saturday. I would be like, this is so much. This is what I'm looking forward to. Whereas like 2 years prior, I'd be like so looking forward to the galas, like maybe meddling and like meeting with other people from other clubs, and the galas were like almost like social event, because even like during the week at school, like I was always so tired from training and stuff. But but yeah, I'd say the last 6 months I could feel that the galas and the training and the fatigue was just on like another level. And like I just didn't know how. I couldn't just like say like I don't want to go to swimming today. Like I'm not going to go to practice. I'm not going to go to galas. I just stayed in it, and then until I reached that absolute breaking point. And I feel like it was a valuable lesson to learn, because now I know what that feels like.
Yes.
That absolute breaking point, when my body gave out actually before my mind did. My mind actually what kept me going, and then eventually it just called quits eventually, and I was like, I can't do this anymore.
And I think a big, I mean, from the little bit that I looked at it, the key component of burnout has to do with management of stress. And it has to do with the accumulation of stress. And how do we ensure that we don't have that? Because, and I know before we started recording, I was saying, burnout could actually maybe just be something that you don't have to experience if you have the right systems and protocols in place to rest when you need to rest, or to recharge when you need to recharge, or dial it back a bit when you need to. And then you can consistently move through life without hitting a point, as you say, when it just kind of reduces to nothing. And then you have to have an absolute break for a period of time, or never go back to the thing.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's at the end of the day, it's stress management. How are you managing the stress on your mind and on your body? It's like load management, like with training, like resistance training. Like you like to be on a program. That's why you don't just do 28 weeks of like peaking. Like each week you're gonna peak until eventually there comes a point where you have to drop off. That's why you have like step loaded programs, so you can like build up and then like have a down week and then build up and then have that. Exactly how that works with your running and stuff. So it's the same way in life. Like when you're trying to tackle like physical commitments with like job related commitments, like trying to run a business and run 100 miles. Like there's a mental aspect for both the running and running the gym, as well as the physical component of just being a high like load on your body. So managing your rest and time in which you're training, time in which you're putting into the gym and things like that. So it's purely down to management, and that a lot of people struggle with. I don't know. You've probably experienced that before. I don't know. In when you were playing rugby as well, I can imagine.
Yeah, I think it
varsity.
sounds a little bit like, I mean, I never thought about my experience with rugby to be something characteristic of a burnout, but kind of hearing your experience, it could very well have been that. I always kind of thought I'd lost interest because it felt like a duty and a job and no longer a game, but that could have been a sort of burnout situation potentially. But it's interesting, yeah. I like the analogy of periodization with the kind of training blocks and the down weeks being applied to life, because I wonder if you could work out, like, kind of take your productivity and your workflow and move it into like 3 week sprints with a 1 week kind of deload. I wonder if that could work. That would be quite interesting.
You have to manage it as if it was a cycle though, because like you're gonna have days where you feel like super brain foggy and like things aren't working, and then when you put the stress on having to complete tasks when you don't feel optimal to doing it, that's extra stress that you don't need. But then there's other days where like you could move the load that you maybe missed from 2 days because you're having like a bit of brain fog, maybe some slight burnout. You took the rest instead, and then prioritize doing it on that day, being more efficient than getting it done anyway. Is a way to like navigate through it. But what a lot of people don't understand is that you don't know that you're experiencing burnout until you burn out. Like I understand that totally, because it's happened to me a few times. So even if it's not as hectic as my swimming example, but you don't know until it's like in your face. That's why like reflection is really important.
And it's often that you also don't even know until after the time. So
Yeah.
you've gotten up to that point, you've burnt out, you've emerged from that, you've kind of recharged, you're doing and getting on with life, and then you look back and you're like, I think I was burnt out. Like that was quite intense. I might have experienced some sort of burnout. I suppose if you're in that for a long, if it becomes chronic, then you can maybe in the moment be like, I am burnt out. I have been burnt out for a period of time. I need to try and figure something out around this.
Sorry to cut you. I think it's also notable to say that like life isn't black and white. So like
No.
you're never gonna know what's gonna happen in a couple days time or in a week's time or in a month's time.
Yeah.
So always curveballs. So like you can say you can manage your stress as well as one can, but you never know. Like one day they might be a whole bunch of deadlines and you got 2 weeks to do it and you just got to crunch through it. But then managing that while doing that, I think takes a lot of experience as well. So going to the end, that absolute burnout, I'd almost say is like in a way like a task that everyone should do and know where that ceiling is. So management is important.
Yeah.
There's something, Matt, I definitely want to pick your brain about your findings now shortly, but there's something that just kind of popped into my mind around how, okay, we have training cycles and we have training blocks. Typically in the strength and conditioning sense, how I've been exposed to it is we go 3 weeks of work and 1 week of deload, and then we go back into another block of working, but it obviously can change depending on the individual, the sport, whatever. But that's the general model, is like 4 week blocks, and that's how it goes. If we look at the conventional work week of 5 days of work, 2 days of rest, that is probably, and then obviously intermittent leave every now and then kind of like a mandatory rest at the end of the year. That could be how we have broken down our workflows in terms of productivity training blocks for the last couple of centuries or however long it's been, using the industries of the last couple of centuries as kind of the yardstick of how we determine how we should approach that specific kind of work. But now, seeing as the world of work has evolved so dramatically and shifted so much, it might actually be time to look at reimagining those productivity training blocks. Is it that we do need to have 5 weeks of work and 5 days of work and 2 days of rest, or whatever the kind of, that 7-day work week looks like? Or is it something where we've got to go 3-day sprint, 1 day off, 3-day sprint, 1 day off? Or is it something that we've got to go 2 weeks of work and then one? Is it not that we are using a kind of legacy model, something that's existed for a long period of time, in a context that is significantly different from what the working world looked like a couple hundred years ago?
And we also understand that people work differently.
People work differently, exactly.
So there isn't one way to do something. So
And I mean, systems and structures are important. It takes a lot of decision making out of the equation. We don't have to assess every unique situation to make a decision. We can fall back on these systems. But it could actually be time now to slowly start reimagining the workflow of how we do things. Obviously we're not now going to go and change the kind of, I mean, it's not out of the question, the 5-day work week, but it's like, it's probably a more pressing conversation than we kind of give time to, at least I think in our space. It's kind of something we just accept. But work is super different from when the whole 5-day work week started. I don't know if you guys did much research into that model, but I'd be interested in any case just to hear maybe one or two of the findings that you found particularly interesting when looking into burnout. What jumped out at you?
Like when I looked into burnout, a lot of the things that really stood out to me wasn't really the specified articles, but more of just the articles that are stepping stones into further studies. So the one thing that I found was the role of burnout within a corporate setting, and they took a sample group and they exposed them to different modes of training. And what is
Exercise.
different modes of exercise and training, whether it's aerobic or anaerobic. And the cool thing was that they saw that there was a reduction in, firstly, the results that came out about it was that there was a reduction in overall emotional and physical awareness, and they got this through a questionnaire. But the cool thing that they found at the end of it was that not only did these people engage in exercise and they felt better, but they were additionally more inclined to look at other aspects of their life very quickly and see that, wait, this aspect doesn't work. Like, I can't be doing this and not be getting enough rest. So it was almost like a study which really tackled a lot of the self-reflection or self-realization of the individuals included. And I found that so much more interesting than the more specified study where they looked at an aspect of burnout within certain individuals. Because I did look at another paper which was looking at the amount, like how exercise affects the amount of rest that individuals get who are experiencing burnout. And I sat like for a whole day reading this. It even went into the next day, and they could find things that were good results, but at the end of the day, they couldn't say that factor of exercise exactly helped them to increase or reduce their stress.
So was the takeaway that exercise reduces the kind of onset of burnout, or it's
Yeah.
another stimulus
The
that contributes
takeaway
to
the
it?
takeaway is that exercise should always be seen as a tool. And I'm gonna go a bit off here, going into a bit of like, because a lot of people's goals over the last few years, or the trend has been weight loss. Exercise has not been seen as a tool in a system, but it's just seen as something that will change everything. But it must be seen as a tool alongside a system of habits that you build to create a lifestyle which will help you alleviate things that you're struggling with.
So exercise can be used as a catalyst to change in your life that
Yes,
will make the general picture a lot less
yes, and
susceptible to one where
yeah,
burnout might feature.
yeah, and it takes obviously a good structure, a good foundation of coaching staff and knowledgeable individuals to help guide individuals that are struggling with burnout or that are struggling with achieving their goals. And it's about guiding them so that they can also have that moment of self-realization. Because as I started the podcast off saying, burnout is different to everyone. So a lot of the studies that I was also seeing, they were saying that the methods that they brought forward to alleviate burnout wasn't working for some people, and for those people, immediately when it wasn't working, they'd just go to the next thing. They'd pull out of the study and just go to the next thing, because they are at such a place where they are living with it now, and they don't know what to do or what's the next step. So if something isn't working, their patience is very low as well. So we can introduce something that doesn't necessarily cause any additional stress to their current life, but something that can almost sneak in, help them to realize like, okay, this is a really cool aspect that I'm starting to enjoy. Now I can take this and then also look at different parts of my life and improve it. So it was a very interesting paper that I really tried to dive into. And yes, it wasn't traditional in terms of like giving straight to the point answers, but it was really cool in giving a good broadcast into where the future of research is going in that topic. Because when I was also discussing with another peer, one of my former colleagues, and he was just saying that it's so refreshing because at the same time, when we try and get really scientific, and you get really definite about these terms, and it kind of touches on one group more than another group of individuals that are struggling with that same um, item or that same, how can I say, goal that they're looking to achieve, they quickly disassociate from it, and they just think that that isn't for them, but it should be for everyone.
What's an example of that?
So like whether it's like a burnout study or like a weight loss study, when they have certain modes of exercise and the study doesn't have exercise, the exercise list doesn't consist of exercises or movements that everyone can do in the sample, and then you get out of 50 people, 25 of them can't do the first exercise. By that already, they'll feel like, okay, I don't know if this will work for me.
And
You
then
know?
they will assume that exercise as a whole is not a tool they can
Exactly.
use to alleviate. I think that also kind of is a little bit of a segue, but with a lot of the time with maybe in a burnout context or other context as well, it's not so rest is obviously very important in kind of alleviating acute burnout in particular, where you've kind of hit this point where you feel like the wheels have fallen off and you've ground to a halt and you're not moving anymore. Obviously, you just go and rest. But a lot of the time, if you can feel the onset of the thing, obviously preemptively, you could rest, or you could look at adding something in that fills your cup. that has nothing to do with your day to day. Like I personally find, and I've said this previously before as well, like doing a small task at the beginning of the day that has nothing to do with Horizon and has nothing to do with the team and nothing to do with any goal or anything, just kind of a personal check-in. I find like that sets me up so much better for dealing with the challenges of the day. And I think adding that little thing prolongs the onset of any form of like needed rest, because what will I do on that rest? I'll sit, I'll reflect, I'll think about, how I got to that point. I'll probably do a bunch of nothing as well. But a lot of the time when you do nothing, you end up thinking about stuff. And I'll probably end up thinking about what I otherwise would have written down or thought about in the 20 minutes that I gave to myself in the morning on a walk or during a journal or something. So it's like you could actually, put yourself in a place where burnout doesn't have to kind of spring on you and surprise you or whatever it may be, if you add something. And that thing could also be exercise, where you add exercise. It's like you don't necessarily have to remove something, and it's kind of counterintuitive because you feel like with burnout, you want to declutter or remove stuff from your plate. But in my situation, I would definitely say from personal experience, if I had to remove exercise, I think I would probably hit a point of burnout much quicker than if I, kept it in there. And I think that would probably be the case for a lot of people. We like dogs. We need to go for a walk. Like we need to go outside and we need to play and do that stuff. And that rest can be nothing, but rest can also be doing something that fulfills you. I think that that's very important to, and that's also why I like doing things at such an excess, because I'm like, this is filling my cup. So like, why do I not just do a whole lot more of it? But then obviously also past a certain point, that can then have burnout related stuff attached to it. I'm sure you loved swimming. I loved rugby, but it got to a point where it's like, nah. Sorry.
I find the best thing for me personally for burnout is that I enjoy things that are so completely out of what I love to do, which is like coach people and make people reach their goals and excel in fitness and health. And the thing that helps me is just something completely outside of that. Like, for example, I love to collect Lego, and that's like so random, but for me, that's like something that switches my brain into another kind of mode and takes me completely away from my work. Even though that I might not necessarily need time away from the work mentally, it's almost just there as a prerequisite. And then when I do it, it helps to maintain me along the way. So I have these almost like two brains, one Lego brain, one fitness and health brain. So that's the way I see it. And that helps me to just stay on track and check in with myself. Then I know that that's like my downtime. And as you were saying, like it's important to know what that downtime looks for you. If it's like complete rest of doing nothing, or if it's like watching a TV series or going for a walk or doing some form of exercise away from your regular set routine, if that makes sense. Because, we sometimes like to get into routine and habits, and then like we get carried away and then we forget to take time away from that. And that's what kind of is that overwhelming factor.
And that's really important. I remember my mom said to me once, because it was when I was getting into doing, like I went through a whole phase in lockdown, or just before lockdown actually, of getting into the whole kind of 5 a.m. thing, where you wake up really early and you just have this whole like productivity buzz and reading and exercise and whatnot. And I tried that for a while, and I actually got into the groove of it, and I really enjoyed it. But there was a point where it got really difficult, and I was saying to Mom, I'm struggling to get this 5 a.m. Like it's been like 4 days, and like I keep saying I'm gonna get, and I don't do it. She's like, well, why don't you kind of just tell yourself that for the next 2 weeks you're not allowed to wake up at 5 a.m. And I was like, okay, I'll try that. And I did that, and after like the 5th day, I was like, I would love to get up at 5 a.m. And then it's like, no, I've got this thing where I'm not supposed to get up at that time. And it's a weird one where it's a small kind of reframing of just taking some time off of
It's
that
a mind shift.
Yes, where you kind of you abstain from the thing for a while, which is literally what I suppose resting from a thing is, and it really kind of like reignites that excitement around the thing, where you can get to the summer season when it's time to like really get busy in health and fitness. Like a lot of people are looking for help, and a lot of people want to come and move, and you can like get up to that time and you're just not feeling up for it, and that's probably because throughout the year you didn't take those little micro stops, those micro breaks of like, what, I'm not going to take this client at this time. I'm not going to.
Also, just or not just understanding that like it's okay not to be busy in the down season, like putting so much pressure on yourself. I need to have so many clients, this month, but it's like it's fucking the middle of June, like no one's here.
Exactly.
Like take the time to maybe restructure the way you like sell your service, or take some time to restructure your Instagram or how you market yourself. And then when the season comes around and when it's time, then it's like, okay, now I'm in full swing and I'm ready to do it, instead of having that overwhelming pressure like of I need set amount of clients every week. This is my you need to also change the way you look at your goals.
I think busyness can sometimes feel or present itself in a little bit of like a similar way as what an addiction would be. Like a lot of people will be kind of addicted to the feeling of busyness. And I know personally, I've definitely had that in the past where I'm like, if I'm not busy all the time, I'm
wasting your time.
I'm wasting my time, and I'm antsy, and I'm like, oh, I must be seeing a client, I must be this and that. And it's like, I will definitely from time to time still experience that for sure. But I've kind of learned over the years as well, with especially like a quiet season, that's your time to consolidate. It's your time to take it easy, chill.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to, because it's pretty natural, that cyclical nature of things. It's like, okay, let's rest in accordance with what feels like the natural kind of time to rest. When there's not a lot of work, then take that. Okay, cool, I'm going to consolidate, I'm going to organize, I'm going to, go into work an hour later than I usually would have because I don't have clients from whatever time in the morning. And that's completely fine, because come December, you're going to wish that it was like that.
Exactly.
You're going to be like,
Trust me, I know
it's like
that's
flipping wall to wall from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And then it's like, damn, I would love to catch a break.
And then you have to know how to look at things from a different perspective. Like when you constantly so strung up about having to have these goals in like the off season, and you don't take the time to look like from the outside in and see what's actually happening, and take the time to as I said, evolve your business and be ready for the season where it's gonna matter. That when the season comes around and you haven't done that, then you're like, oh fuck, I didn't take the time, and now I'm stuck in it. Now I'm like, now I can't be creative for my clients, or I didn't take the time to maybe do an extra course. Like do an extra course when it's in the off season, like upskill yourself. And then when the time comes around to take on those new clients, you feel more equipped and you can offer more as your service.
What's also really important is in order to try and prevent burnout, I think variety in stimuli and changing the information that you're putting in is extremely important, because what can cause burnout is boredom a lot of the time. I'm bored, I'm doing the same thing every single day, I want something different. So it's like, if you're going to try and fill your schedule from start to finish with the same task, even when it's like, okay, this is a lull period, let me maybe do a diet and nutrition course, let me maybe whatever, it's like, no, I must have more clients, I must and then when it's you get to a certain time, it's like, shit, I'm bored. I've been doing, and obviously each client presents a different set of challenges, but you've kind of missed out on that opportunity to do something different and break up the year into like different kind of periods. Okay, this is a learning period, this is a consolidation period, this is a hard client and productivity period, this is a rest period. So it's like, I think embracing that, those slower times. And that's something that I see a lot in just regular work as well. Like, I mean, not that PT is not regular work or coaching is not regular work, but more conventional jobs around like kind of office jobs, where I notice sometimes that, and I definitely had this as well when I was in an office job, sometimes when I didn't have tasks set ahead in front of me, like I'd be like, oh, what am I doing? Like I need to find something. And it's like, no, not really. Like just take that day a little bit slower. Like organize your desktop. Like chill. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. You don't have to always have something on the go.
Also,
Yeah.
don't let it ruin your sleep, because lack of sleep is going to cause you burnout.
No, definitely.
Ruining your sleep over stressing about not having the desired schedule you want is going to cause you to have burnout quicker, because we know
Yeah.
sleep is connected to everything.
Everything.
Yeah, I think
So-
to add to that, like, it makes me think of Atomic Habits, which I think is probably still one of my favorite books to refer to from time and time again, because it talks about building habits. But if you take that same thing that you read from it, you can apply it to so many different phases of life. Like, there's one saying where he says, when failure occurs or when things don't work out, you don't fall to the standard of your goals, but you fall to the standard of your system. So for us, it's so easy for something to go wrong, for us to, like, maybe have a cancellation or a client that's not happy with our services, or even a client that signs up but then kind of doesn't commit. um, and it's almost too easy to look at the goal of, like, trying to sign on a client and be like, oh, I didn't achieve my goal. But the more realistic or the harder thing to do is actually just to reflect and go back to your system and be like, okay, cool, that didn't work out. I'm not gonna get too upset about it. I'm just gonna look at what I was meant to do and how I got this client in the first place, and I'll do it again. And that builds resilience. So when you go deeper with it, obviously it applies differently to everyone, but that's what I took from it. And it's just about being resilient in those moments when it's hard, so that when things get better and they flow, you're just going to be flying. You know what I mean? So having a good system in terms of your rest, your activity, knowing when to go, knowing when to stop, is such an important aspect to kind of master. And I'm not saying master in terms of, like, do it once, set up something, don't change it for 5 years. It's just about continuously, day by day, looking at your system and being like, how can I change this? How can I take input from the people around me, from the environment that I'm in, and how can I improve this to help me today? And then tomorrow I'll go and look at it again. You know?
I think yeah, that's I don't know, bro. What's that? My thought process just completely melted away, bro. Oh my word. I completely, bro. This is an important point. Do you have any points?
No, I just think, like, in a nutshell, like, burnout is, again, like, it's an experience everyone will face. How you face it is, kind of up to you. You would experience it in different ways. Some people experience it extreme, some don't. But I feel like everyone should have a good understanding of where their limits are, and just figure out what works for you to try and manage your load. You've got a bucket of water and you've got a million buckets, and how you're going to fill them. That's how you do it. It's a matter of, like, how you manage. You only have so many hours in the day. How are you going to give those hours, and how are you going to make sure you're the most productive, but without foregoing your sanity, and
Yes.
eventually burning out. So it's just about building a nice strong ship and making it sail across
Yeah.
the seas.
That you actually
Everyone stays happy.
You actually reminded me of something, which was that I think it's also important to acknowledge that a lot of the time, rest and having being able to rest is a huge privilege as well. It's like it's something that a lot of people, they kind of working in an environment where that's not an option. You must continue, otherwise they won't get that paycheck and they won't be able to take that time off.
Yeah.
And that's going to have severe consequences for them. But I think, especially for people in our kind of fields, like Mark and us as coaches, what you can do as well, and I mean, scoff at this if you will, but if you really want to cultivate a more restful schedule, is you can minimize the amount of work you're taking on and increase the price of your service. Because and it sounds very simple, but it works. Like, I did that with my PT, and I was scared to do that, but I was like, you know what, you don't want to be working literally from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. in order to pay your bills. And your clients, a lot of the time, will respect the fact that you increase your prices. Some of them will leave, a lot of them will probably leave, but a few of them will stay, and you will then establish a new baseline that you will build upon, and you will then get to a point where you are kind of supporting yourself in the same, if not a more effective way, with fewer clients.
Yeah.
and then you can do the thing again. And it's like, I think that's also really important from like a private contractor or like a self-employed person's point of view, is to get, like, figure out ways to just, you know, we do want to help everyone, but we also need to help ourselves at the end of the day in order for us to be able to work sustainably. So increasing that price level, serving fewer people, and having more time to rest, the work that you're going to then deliver on is a lot more. It's the quality's better.
Never resent what you do.
Never resent what you do.
Yeah.
I've had that so many times.
Yep.
Where I'm like, shit, dude, I'm charging way too little, and like I actually don't want to see this client, and it's not their fault, it's my fault because I'm not charging enough, and I'm undervaluing myself. So now I'm like, oh, this is like so lame. Like I don't want to do this. And that's not like they didn't do anything. You're just undervaluing yourself. Where they might find a PT otherwise who's going to charge that same price, but for them, like they feel like that is adequate value for what they're offering, and then they're getting better service. They must do that, as opposed to you kind of working with them at a rate that's like what you don't actually feel to be fair, and then you're a grumpy, quiet, disengaged PT, and nobody wants that, or contractor. But moral of the story is rest important. Value yourself.
Yeah.
Value your time. Go take a nap.
And I think most importantly, also just talk to your peers, and talk to the people that are around you, and that will also quickly be a life hack to see if you have the right people around you. Because if those people can support you in what you're kind of trying to talk to them about, and they don't belittle your feelings, and they take your emotions seriously, and kind of like everything that you're saying seriously, and if they don't, you quickly know what you have to do or what you have to change from that point onwards, because I think that we all are products of our environment and what we choose to surround ourselves with.
Exactly.
Thanks, Matt. I'm going to come to you all the time.
Yeah.
Anytime.
I'm going to confide in you. I confided in Matt on Friday. It was a really beautiful moment, and then we went for coffee.
Yeah.
It was actually very hectic, but I'm being serious.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was good. Look at us now.
Yeah, now we're having a round table, well, semicircle, or whatever shape this is. But
You're on a box.
I'm on a box. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Such a pleasure. Looking forward to the next episode. And Mark, as always, shout out.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Yes, Mark.
And we'll catch you all in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to the show, guys. We love answering specific questions. So if there's anything you want to know, leave a comment or reach out to us directly at HorizonZA on Instagram, or email us at movement@horizongym.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Seb Prentice, and this is Beyond Physical.